Hey everybody, I am here with Kelly Hoxsey, one of my favorite therapists in the entire world. And Kelly, I'd love for you just to take just a moment and introduce yourself a little bit to everybody.
I'm Kelly Hoxsey, and I'm in private practice at Frisco Family Counseling here in Frisco. I've been here for about 15 years in private practice. I work with children, families, couples, adults. I really love working with large family systems and complex family systems, helping people really overcome their challenges and meet their goals.
Yeah. And Kelly, thank you for all the help you've given to the insight that I've gained from you over the years and all the people you've helped in the church. It just really means a lot. I appreciate that. And so, all right, so here we are during the self-quarantine time of life. We're all at our homes, or some people are still out, the essential workers. So, I guess, I'm not very essential. I'm at home. So, but anyway, what are some things we can do? Because it's weird during this time because our brains can start to kind of almost like spiral in on themselves and tell us a lot of negative messages. How can we kind of take care of our mental health during this time in a better way?
Well, I think about with this virus being contagious, that we also really need to remember that emotions are contagious and we influence other people's emotions. We derive our emotions. And that with the virus being contagious, also some emotions that are contagious is panic and fear and despair and hopelessness. And so really being careful about the emotional impacts that this virus brings to ourselves, to our family, to our community. And I know I'm asking for some superhuman strength to be able to limit that, but knowing that emotions can be contagious, really selecting and being intentional about which emotions that you invest yourself in and contage others with, such as kindness and peace and hope, that we really direct ourselves to being able to use our mental health capacity as well as we can. One of the things I think about is that this time will come to an end. We don't know when, and we don't know what the status of our individual lives or our loved ones' lives will be at the end of this, but it will end. This is not forever and ever. And just using some history, when we don't have information about a pandemic like this is new, but what we do have are some other major large-scale tragedies that have affected us. And I think about 9/11, and I think about Hurricane Katrina, and what happens, human nature is this, oh no, take care of me, take care of my family, and take all the resources and the toilet paper and some things that are unnecessary. And then there's a regrouping, and we nationally and internationally come together as people. We help support people. I was watching the Today Show this morning and seeing flight after flight full of mental health and medical health workers on the way to New York City where they're most needed. And that is what Americans do. We support, we show up, we reorganize. And one of my favorite quotes right now is a quote that says, "The world came together as the people were apart." And while we are 6 feet apart, we are certainly very much organized as a system to stay together.
Yeah, and it's funny how I've been studying some church history a little bit, which is probably what most people are doing there during this time, studying church history.
I'm sure they are.
And one of the things that it's been interesting is the church has a tendency, we kind of swing back and forth. Sometimes our ethics go to just thinking about ourselves and our individual spirituality. But if you look at a true biblical spirituality, it's a change in you so that you can make a difference to others. And so you're impacting your community. And so I love that. It's just kind of a little mental reshift of our brains instead of like, okay, what can I do to be reaching out through phone calls, text messages, doing something to serve other people. And that can really lift up our spirits a little bit in that. And so, and so sometimes a little bit in this too, we're feeling a little out of control. And so what are some things we can maybe do to give us a little bit more of a sense of, I don't know if sense of control, is that the right, would that be a good question to ask?
I really like setting the framework there using the Serenity Prayer, which is used in a lot of different formats for treatment recovery, but just a sense of resetting oneself in search of serenity. And the Serenity Prayer is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so that really shifts of, if I don't have control, I need to be able to surrender that, and in what way we surrender that. But first, really being able to exert control in areas of our lives that we have direct control over right now. One of the things that is so important to regulate is our media consumption, and that's any time, but especially during heightened senses of anxiety and fear, is regulated. I know I need to stay attuned to what's going on in the world, but I choose times and I choose media sources where I'm at a place that is not before bed. I can reset, I can shift, I can process and synthesize the information, and then redirect it in a way that's a helpful way. One of the things, especially with media, is with families. When 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina happened, I treated teens and children specifically for vicarious trauma right here in the North Texas area who were not in New York and they were not in Louisiana, but what happened was they were overexposed to the media. So families leaving the TV on all day, all night, talking about it so much, where children don't have real world skills. They're looking to their parents to protect them and set the tone for a sense of security. So really regulating the media just for yourself, but then also for your family around you. One of the things to have a sense of control is setting your narrative of what does this time mean, because when this time ends, whether it's a year from now and we reflect back, or we reflect decades back and we tell our children and our grandchildren about this time in history, what do we want to be able to say was our story? Did we hold up in our closet in fear and fret and wring our hands? Did we strengthen our relationship with Christ? Did we support our community in some different kinds of ways? Did we grow closer to our family? So being able to set our narrative about what this time means. And for myself, it's making sure that years from now, when I retell this story, the story that I can tell is that I glorified God. And what glorifying God means to me is a personal experience of being able to use him as my sense of peace, that he's my provision, not the circumstances. Many of us are enjoying a slower pace of life without all of the activities and the schedules and the commuting. One of the things I appreciate about that is just being able to slow down and reset our priorities. And I think years from now and a year from now, already people are starting to say, wow, I didn't realize how busy I was, and now until I had to really get still. So enjoy this slower pace. Making sure that you're staying productive, though, keeping some healthy habits. I have 2 teenagers at home, and that's tough. They do not want to be up and out of bed, and they're not getting up early by any means.
Mine are not either.
Whose are?
Yeah.
But still maintaining somewhat of a rhythm and a routine to keep our circadian rhythms for sleep intact and organized. Having some set of plan for the day, a sense of purpose, and sustaining our connections, which is such a different format. While you or I may feel connected to our family because we're still in a community here in our own home and space, there's so many people who are not in community. And so reaching out to the people in whatever format, especially grandparents who are not able to get access. I have, 2 in my life that my dad and my mother-in-law, we can't go see them, but we call them a little bit more often because they're watching the media. They are used to being able to see people. But for those people, the older generation, writing them a letter, an old school letter. One of them doesn't have FaceTime. That's out of her wheelhouse, so she's not going to do that. But she sure appreciates more increased contact. And there's some people who just live alone, and so they're seeing all the complaints on social media about their family wearing them out, but they're feeling very lonely. And some of the social media complaints about how bored people are is really difficult for other people to hear and to see when some people are grieving the loss of a loved one, or they have family members who are working locally or out of state who are part of the rescue team and first responders dealing with this. So the comments about boredom is so unrelatable to them. And I'm not saying don't post it, just be cautious with that. I also think that people need a great sense of humor. Some of the memes going around are really, really funny. And so I'm glad to see people using humor, but just maintaining that perspective. Here locally, I think most of us are still living in a first world country. I think in our whole nation, we're still living in a first world country, but our luxuries are limited. Although many of us here locally, because of lack of income and even especially nationally, it's really beginning to shift in the lifestyle way, which Brock and I talked about before we started this video, today is how our lives are already directly affected. And so just being sensitive to that, making sure that you reach out, help other people. There are still ways to reach out and help. I know that dropping supplies last weekend or this week, this past week at Hope for people who are in need, that you can still be kind, you can still support, you can still serve.
Yeah. And I think the main thing that I'm getting from our conversation is I love the idea that you said about the serenity prayer. And if people want to find that prayer, they can just Google serenity prayer. And I think a lot of times in the church, as again, I'm studying church history, is that we've kind of moved to just like, what are some prayers off the top of my head? And sometimes that doesn't get to the depths of our souls. And so maybe sometimes prayers that others have written can help us get there. And that serenity prayer is a neat way for that to happen. And I think the other thing that I'm really gaining from you is like, to because it's so easy to focus inward, to start to think about outward. How can we think about other people and just do small things? Like I had a buddy from college I hadn't talked to in years. Just was like, hey, I was going through my contact list and thought, I haven't talked to Brock in a long time. We had a fantastic conversation that just really meant the world to me. So doing some stuff like that just can really, really be helpful. And so, Kelly, thank you so much. And I know one of the things that you're doing right now is you're available for telehealth where people can call, make appointments to meet with you. And so you're on our website at hopefellowship.net/counselors for people to reach out to you. But any last parting words of wisdom or thought? And I hope people can see why Kelly Hoxsey is one of my favorite therapists of all time after this interview. But any last words of wisdom for us before we go?
Well, video conferencing using telehealth is not a therapist preferred format. Brock and I also talked today about how my colleagues and I are more exhausted at the end of the day. We prefer human-to-human contact. There's no replacement for that. You just can't replace it. But we all need the flexibility to be able to get our needs met in a different format. So do be open to telehealth. I'm going to share with Brock some resources for therapists here locally that are offering free and reduced costs for telehealth. And it works very much like this. I prefer to use earbuds because it's more private. Sound is not going throughout the office space. And I actually am coming to my office. I'm not doing my sessions from home because there's too many people there. And so it's more professional. And we are working really hard to make sure that we're still meeting the needs. But do reach out. Resources are certainly available.
All right. Well, thank you, Kelly, for your time and appreciate it. And thank you for being open to our cool gallery view that we have going here today. This is so exciting. So thank you for your time, Kelly. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, brother. Bye-bye. Have a great day.